Ready to stop trading time for money and build a business that can scale? Then you're in good company. This is the Productize Podcast, where I chat with entrepreneurs who've transformed their businesses using the Productized service model. I'm your host, Brian Castle. Want to learn my best strategies for productizing your business? Then get my free crash course by going to productizecourse.com. Now let's get into the show.
Hey folks, on today's episode, I caught up with Joanna Wiebe to talk about a lesser-known product that she offered through the years over at Copyhackers, and that's a personalized review and copy critique. Now, this conversation was from late 2014, and it's interesting to kind of go back and hear how Joanna used this productized service offering to help sustain and grow her business and grow Copyhackers in many different ways. But this is, one of those kind of lesser known products that was actually quite successful for her. And we're going to kind of hear and dive into that story in today's case study. So a few interesting highlights include how Joanna was able to turn on and turn off the service as she grew her business, the mechanics of delivering a recorded review as a service. I thought that was a really interesting and really a streamlined way of doing things. And then the value of a one-time purchase instead of recurring revenue. Now, this is interesting because so many people get hung up on, it has to be recurring revenue. It has to be recurring revenue. But here's an example of just a one-time purchase, productized service that worked out really well for Joanna. Also, much more in this interview, so stay tuned for that. Now, today's quick tip when it comes to productized services is to standardize, and this is a core concept when it comes to the productized service model. And what I mean by standardize is to craft your service in such a way that you're delivering it using one methodology, one set of tools, one process. Keeping things as standard as possible is what will enable you to not only streamline the service, but actually delegate many of those tasks, if not all of those tasks. Because if you're doing the service 10 different ways for 10 different clients using 10 different tool sets and methods, which is often the case in a traditional consulting or an agency model, then it just gets really, really difficult to move a lot of that work off of your own plate as the founder and start to train a team. Once you standardize your way of doing things, even though there may be 10 other ways of doing things, and in some cases those methods might even be better, but you do things in a certain way for a certain reason, and that is to make your service as efficient and as effective as possible for your clients. And the key there is to standardize what you do. So that's the quick tip. Now let's get into the interview with Joanna Wiebe.
All right, I'm here with another case study interview. Today I'm talking to Joanna Wiebe from Copyhackers. Joanna, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Very cool.
So, thanks so much for joining me. I've been a really big fan of all your work for a while. It started with your ebooks a couple of years ago. Those have been a huge help for me. I know so many others as well. So.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. That's so great. Yay.
Yeah. So today, looking at your site, Copyhackers, you guys are offering quite a few different things. Aside from the blog, of course, you've got ebooks, courses. You're coming out with this new thing called Disco. I want to hear a little bit about that as well.
Okay. Cool.
But what really kind of caught my eye is this little link at the very bottom of your site where it says website reviews. So if you hit that, that is basically your productized service. So
yes.
So I'd really like to hear, all about that. And before we really get into that, for those who aren't familiar with you, why don't you, kind of introduce who you are, what you guys do?
Sure. Okay. So I'm Joanna. I'm the co-creator of Copyhackers, where we help startups in particular learn how to convert like mofos, is how we put it. So we're all about helping people learn to write copy for their own businesses, usually, so that they can grow those businesses and eventually outsource that work, ideally. But that's what we do. So we help coach people to the point where they can confidently write their emails and web copy and everything that goes with that, and hopefully then grow their businesses using those words.
Awesome. And so, maybe you can kind of take us back a couple of years. How did you really get started in your own business? Was it initially just kind of copyright and consulting work? and then you kind of grew out the site, Copyhackers, or how did that go?
Yeah, it actually started. I accidentally quit my job at Intuit. It was time. It was time to quit it, but I did without really realizing I'd done it. But that was, anyway, long story there. But as for the year leading up to that point at which I quit, I'd been working with some people with whom I'd connected on Hacker News. So there's this cool guy, Sharif Bichet, who'd founded something called Better Means. And he was looking for copy help on Hacker News. Just said, I think it was a show HN. He said, take a look at my new site. Tell me what you guys think. And so I looked at it, and I had some notes for him. So I put them together in like a PowerPoint, and I sent them back to him. And he was like really happy with that. And he posted this big thing on Hacker News about like how great the community is, and he used that as an example. So I had all these people, these tech startups writing and saying, can you do that for me too? And I was like, okay, yeah, if I can turn it into case studies, I can do that. Excuse me. And then those I couldn't help, because it got just flooded with requests, right? So those I couldn't, they said, well, you should really write an ebook. And I was like, oh, okay, I hadn't really thought of that before. So over the course of the year, I worked on some case studies with some of the people I was able to help out, and then also wrote what turned into 4 ebooks, which I launched on Hacker News about 2 months after leaving Intuit, my previous job.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, like from the very beginning, you were coming out with these ebook products and, of course, working with, consulting clients, but it also sounds like from the very beginning that you were really involved in like the startup scene and like Hacker News and tech startups and not just kind of doing copywriting work for just anyone.
No, exactly. We'd, coming from Intuit, this cool tech company that was like acquiring a lot of really tech companies that we liked, like startups like Mint. They had just acquired around this time, like around the time I started spending more time on Hacker News, I guess. And Lance, who's my partner in life and at Copyhackers, has been on Hacker News since like forever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'd been kind of involved loosely in this community and really loved startups and had built a few little hobby sites and services and things like that. So we felt, part of this community. And that's where it all kind of grew out of. It started with our target audience actually becoming part of that audience, which is kind of different.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about the No Fluff website review. What is that and what's involved and how does it work?
So it's kind of built out of that idea that startups would like to get help with their copy because a lot of people aren't that. Either they're not excited about writing their own copy or they really don't have the time. Even if they have the time to read some ebooks that teach them, they don't have the time to make that part of their working life because a small business owner is wearing so many hats, right? You're doing everything. So you want to hire a copywriter, but you can't afford to actually bring one on, and a lot of the fees that experienced copywriters charge, they're just too far out of what a startup can usually afford. So with that in mind, we were like, well, we can't help everybody, and we can't lower our fees because I just don't believe in that, right? And like, you have a certain value and people should pay for that value. So what could we adjust to make it so we could help more people for less money and give them what they want and what they need without having to compromise anything on either side. So we'd had a few people ask us if we could just take a look at their page, right? You get a lot of emails. Can you just take a look and give me your thoughts? So when those got to be too much too, we thought, well, let's put this out there. We'll charge $900 to do an hour-long video review of like 3 pages on their site, and we'll put a little recommendations report together for them and some recommended copy for key parts like your homepage headline, or if you've got a plans and pricing page, kind of put together a rough wireframe of how we would recommend you do that. And then you just take that and go with it. And then we'll have like a chat at the end in case you have any questions. So we put that out there, and people responded really well to it, thankfully. And we're like, whenever we open it up again, we get quite a few. We sell it quite quickly and have to close it down again. But yeah, that's kind of where it was born, from the same thing that the Copyhackers business was born from. People need this help that a service provider can give, but they can't afford the full meal deal.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a few things are kind of popping out to me here. I mean, number one, like you said, you guys are really part of this community, actively in, talking on like Hacker News and going to conferences and just talking to people. So that kind of invites questions, people asking you to review, and then of course, it's kind of like a no-brainer at that point. There's a need for this service. People are asking for it. And then the other interesting thing, and this applies to all productized services, is you guys are strictly defining the scope. Putting the price tag on it. Here's what's involved. We will review, or actually, so it says here, 60-minute video review. You get a transcript of the video review. You get actual copy options, headlines. And then it says there's a 30-minute chat with you. So it's like clearly defined in this scope. Did you ever get clients who saw this as kind of like just getting started with a consulting engagement and maybe like negotiate some of the terms or ask for more rounds of feedback or anything like that?
It actually has become a thing where a lot of the people that we do these website reviews for are kind of using it as a way to test us, kind of, or to see, like, should we look for a full engagement? Should we do something there? Not test us, that sounds bad, but, look to see, is there something more that we can do together? Are we the right people to hire? So we've had a few people actually think that the service itself is the starting point for an engagement, and then they're surprised when we're like, oh no, we don't have time for a full engagement, right? So that's been, but that doesn't happen often enough to frustrate anybody, and we do have enough, a big pool of freelance copywriters that we outsource work to. So for those people who do turn it into a larger engagement, we do have a solution for them too.
Gotcha. So, I mean, can you tell me a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how this service actually works? What are the kind of things that you guys have done to streamline, when a person requests the service or hits the buy now button, what happens after that? How do you guys process it?
Sure. So they get an email that's triggered where it has, it's a welcome, hey, thanks for signing up, all that. And it's got a link to a form that they then complete, because we need to know some things about their site before we start doing anything or making any comments on it. Maybe it's doing extremely well. We don't know what we're working with, and about their audience, about their products, and their competitors too. So.
And all of that is in a form, so you don't have to set on a consultation about that or anything. It's all just handed to you.
No, we really try to keep the calls to just the one call that happens at the end. It's 30 minutes, that's it. Part of the thing about, taking on clients is you're always available by phone, which I'm a writer who works from home. I like to hide behind my computer as much as possible. So I'd rather not talk on the phone a lot of the time. And I find that calls are often a little unproductive. Nobody really knows what we're trying to get out of a call. Yeah. So we've kept it down to just that one, like you said, really limiting that scope. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And then, I mean, so you schedule them out. How do you guys kind of balance it with all the other things that you're doing? I mean, you're writing articles, you're working on other products and things. Do you how do you kind of fit them in throughout the year? Is it the kind of thing you just turn on if you have a little bit of availability? And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm sure there are better ways. We sell it like a product on our site. Right? Obviously, the idea of a productized service is you've got a SKU for it on your site. Mm-hmm. So that's what we have for it, so we can turn it on and off by just saying in stock or out of stock. We can make it more prominent, of course, by putting it in the nav, the global nav, or down in the footer, which, as you know, is currently out of stock and down in the footer, so we don't want anybody really looking at it right now. But it would be smarter if, in the meantime, while it's out of stock, we were taking email addresses in. We've thought about this before, but the theme that we use, which we love, but the theme that we use doesn't have anything built in right now where if a product is out of stock, you can collect email addresses to notify people when it's back in stock. So that would be something to improve on. We'd like to do that more. But that's really it. We just control it like a switch, right? Are we ready to? And it's a pretty good thing too if you experience that feast or famine thing that a lot of consultants do. When you're like, let's say it's Christmas time, or let's say you're doing what we're doing right now, renovating a house, right? And you want to bring in some extra cash for, let's say, a better range or something. You can just turn it on, put it up higher in your navigation, and we've found at least get some bites pretty quickly and make that cash. And of course, help businesses, right? That's the obvious thing you're doing, but it's a product. So you can move units of it in ways that you can't normally move, regular consulting services.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're packaging in a ton of value. You're getting a professional copywriter to look over your site and, give you the consultation. I mean, that's great. And so, I think the reason why it's so easy for you guys to sell these things out as soon as you turn them on is because you've built such a strong relationship with your audience and a sizable audience at this point, right? So, I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, you write a lot about really understanding your target customer, understanding their pain points, what their goals are, and using that not only in their marketing copy, but also in the way that you position your products and decide what types of products to build. So I mean, I'm wondering, like, for you guys, for Copyhackers, how do you go about understanding who your customers are?
Yeah, I mean, we do that we do thankfully have, it feels to me like we have strong relationships with a nice portion of our readership. Strong relationships, right? For online, they're all weak ties, but some are stronger than others. And so we've got that, we do the things that we recommend to our clients, right? We survey people. On the website review page before when we were accepting people, we had a pop-up, to learn about them. So who's coming to this page and what are they looking for? Those kinds of little things. And then it's just like looking at your analytics. Okay, well, we had for a while there, some of our best ranking blog posts were about how to write an App Store description and how to write subject lines. So we were like, okay, people want to learn how to do these things. Might they want to hire us to do them like this, right? Do a productized service for that. So we put together a couple other productized services, one for your long-form sales page review, one for writing an App Store description for you, and one for subject lines.
Oh, wow.
The subject line.
You guys are offering some many different products on your site now.
Well, we pulled them. Yeah, I know, because we pulled them down actually. The App Store description one was good. People responded really well to it, and they really seemed to want it and appreciate what they got out of it. But it wasn't work that I really enjoyed doing that much. So I was like, forget it, right? I can sell a website review for twice the price, right? Yeah, and if you're not happy with it, this is why you work for yourself, right? If you stop doing things you don't want to do. So I pulled that down. The long form sales page we had up for a long time, but we didn't have that many takers. So I was like, forget it. It might be muddying the message, right? I don't know, right? What are people thinking? Maybe, I don't know. So it wasn't selling well. So we're like, well, why keep it up there? So we took that down. And we had a few people do the subject line service as well. But we had this one guy who said, who wanted us to do them all over again. And I think there was a perception of, I paid you this amount of money and you sent me back, 70 words. So where's the rest of it? I'm like, well, but it's a subject line, right? I sent you, I think we had 10 options that we send you, right? And you can choose from them. We give you recommendations and tell you why we think that subject line should be one that you test. Right. You can do whatever you want with it, but that's what you're paying us for, right? And that's what we would do if you were a client. So that's what we'll do for you now. But, I think getting a small document, even if it's a subject line with a rationale alongside it, it doesn't feel as valuable, right? And you start thinking, okay, I spent $500 on this and I'm a small business owner. And so I was like, we'll take that away too.
Yeah.
So that's gone now. We've really narrowed it down to the website review, and made that as lean as possible too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's interesting because like that headline service, for example, it's almost like that's kind of like the limit in terms of like how small a service can be to productize, right? Like even as high of an impact as a single headline can actually have on a page or a product or whatever. I mean, you're just sending the client, like you said, like 70 words, and it doesn't look like a whole lot.
No,
and
exactly.
I guess that it is a little bit challenging to productize something that small. Although at the same time, it's, I'm sure you do spend a lot of time in researching the right angles to write these headlines around and whatnot. But
and they're paying for 10 years of experience too, right?
Sure.
You can go on Elance, or you could go do it yourself, right? Go try it. You read the blog post on how to write subject lines. Go do it. I'm not forcing you to pay me, but if you do, then that's what you've done. I'm going to provide you the best that I can provide you. And if there's this feeling that you haven't got value out of it because you're looking at quantity and you're thinking like, well, how much time did she really spend on this? Well, you didn't pay an hourly fee, you paid for a product, and I gave that to you. Exactly. But the learning from that for us was definitely, if there's not a perception of quantity, it feels like maybe they didn't spend their money right.
Right. I mean, the other thing that I noticed across all of your products is that they're all connected. I mean, with your core audience, right? Like you have your ebooks, and you even have an ebook on headline writing, and then you used to offer the headline service, right? And the website copy review, you have ebooks on that, and then you have courses, and of course that's everything that you write in your blog as well. So like, I talk a lot about like this ladder of starting with a lower priced ebook, upgrading to a productized service, something like that, and then something else. Are you guys continuously conscious of that, and like, are you looking for ways to make connections and like increasing lifetime customer value, or anything in that regard?
I wish we were smart enough to say, oh yes, we have strategy meetings around a big table. No, we're like, it's really for us, I mean, we're still very small, so we respond to things the same way a lot of people do. If you get the same email coming in your inbox saying, can you help me with this? You could keep responding to that email with a quick like, oh, here's what you can do, where you've given them something free that they're not going to value, or you can do something about it, right, and turn it into something. So we've been cool with just learning from what people are saying and telling us and kind of reacting to that, like the lean startup methodology, right? You hear something from people, you build a loose product around it, you put it back out there and say, market, what do you think? And some of them will stick and other ones won't. And we're okay with some of them not sticking and just getting rid of them, and then other ones working and they stay. Now, if it's like this ladder idea that you have, I think it's very smart. I've never thought of it that way, but it has happened naturally that you move from the ebook. So it's kind of like validation, or at least from our perspective, of the idea of this ladder, because naturally, organically, it's just happened, right? We had the ebooks, and then we have courses, and then we have a big service, a productized service. And then from there, you can turn that into a larger consulting situation.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
when there's that.
Like, I mean, I have to credit Philip Morgan for that term that he kind of pointed that out with productized services, where and I'm seeing this as a trend in a lot of these case studies where you offer like the one-time website review or an audit or some kind of like here are 10 changes that you can make right now. That's product number one, and then we can make those changes for you, or we can make them on an ongoing basis, continue to optimize. That's like a monthly recurring productized service, so it's becoming like a pattern. Very cool.
We haven't got to the monthly recurring one yet. We've seen a lot of people do it. I don't know how successful they are at it. Hopefully you'll learn more about that with these interviews. I'd love to learn that, because for us it seems like, and I don't know if other copywriters are listening to this or people who are like in content or anything, it feels like I just don't know how to turn that into something that people are regularly willing to pay for, like to keep you. It's interesting. It's an interesting situation. If you can figure it out and get people to actually highly desire what you're selling month after month and still make a good profit on it, so not spend your whole life it's not just like a retainer, it's like a proper productized service that's recurring. That would be interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, you got guys like Philip Morgan who does basically monthly content creation, like writing articles and that kind of thing, and then like Nick DeSabato, who does like monthly A/B tests, who run an A/B test and then optimize it, implement the changes and whatnot. But what I want to ask you is about more about this customer research idea, and you guys have been doing it for a while. You've been teaching a lot about that. So what are some kind of key tips that anyone starting out in really any sort of product or business, like how can you get to know your customers and your audience better? I know you write a lot about doing surveys. Like, what are some key questions that you like to ask, and any kind of tips like that?
So there are questions I don't ask, right? More around like demographics and things like that. Who really cares, right? If you're a man or a woman, or if you're 24 or 84, it's your problem, right? It's your need, and can we solve that? So when we're asking questions, we're really trying to identify, obviously, what a pain might be. So that's like unique usually to, if it's a survey that you're asking on a landing page, like a pop-up survey, like Disco or Qualaroo, then you target it toward like the page they've landed on, right? To understand. So you're doing your research. Okay, you want to build a productized service. So you see in your analytics that you have these 3 pages that are most visited. What might that mean about your audience? And then what can you learn about them by going and putting these pop-up surveys or whatever? I mean, it's pretty easy to put a little Qualaroo or Disco on there. Just ask them a question, but it has to be a question that you can actually use, right? I think we do tend to lean toward asking these demographic type things instead of really getting into what they're thinking about and how you can solve that pain for them in a way that they're willing to pay for it. So the question, we don't have like a magic set of questions. It's really like custom to that moment. And then, trying to let them feed it to us and then learn from that and then go back and ask another question. You'll be asking a different audience more likely than asking the same person, unless you can do multiple questions in a row on your pop-up survey based on what their previous answer was. But that's really what we're doing. There's really not a lot of magic. The magic is in the work that you do, right? Yeah. It's actually doing it. So everybody's like, oh, well, what's the magic trick? Guess what? Install code on your site, put the pop-up survey on there, and start asking questions, and then see what stuff doesn't, where you're like, oh, it's true. Why do we care if this person's 25 or 95? Don't ask that question anymore. That's not going to help us build a product. Right. But ask other questions, really, and get down to it, right? I wish I had a great set of questions, but they vary.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that, about the demographic thing, because you read so many articles about how you have to develop this avatar and then even put a photo next to it and understand that they're between 25 and 35, female, and this and that, and they, but what really matters is what are they working on? What do they need to get done? What is their goal? Mm-hmm. What is their biggest challenge? What's super frustrating to them right now?
Yeah, totally, right? What, when it comes down to it, are they motivated by money? Are they motivated to save time? And of course, figuring out things about who they are can help you get there, right? So if you learn that a lot of your audience is filled with C-levels, okay, we can imagine a few things about that then, right? They're probably, they care less about money and more about time. They have a lot of money, not much time. So our messaging and the products that we build might be better targeted at saving them time or making them time rather than the money side of it, right? So those kinds of questions are kind of related to, a demographic sort of thing if you're talking about like job title or their role. But yeah, there's not much you can really do with that. I mean, that old avatar thing really goes back to the Body Shop, right? I think they were the first case study, first really well-known case study for having this picture of your ideal person, your ideal customer, right, on the wall next to every desk. And they had a name for her and her age. And I think it worked really well for them. But is it also limiting because others have come along and taken market share away from Body Shop? So should you be that dedicated to an avatar or more dedicated to constantly responding to changing needs and problems people have?
Right.
I don't know. Worth finding out.
Exactly. So, before we go, I do want to kind of hear a little bit about Disco. So I've seen you writing about it. I mean, is it actually available now, or it's coming around the corner, or tell us about it.
Yeah, we have that problem where we have surrounded ourselves very thankfully. We feel very blessed by it, right? To be so surrounded by people who are so smart. And so we're learning a lot about building products. And as we do, we were at Business of Software 2 weeks ago at the conference, and we're sitting up there listening to a talk about jobs to be done, that model of developing a product idea. Lance and I were sitting there and we looked at each other and we were like, we have to rethink Disco, because it's you're constantly, right? We know that you have to have a value proposition for everything that you have and do. It has to have a reason for being that's true to that your audience cares about. Doesn't matter what you care about, matters what they care about. Okay. And we've been wondering, well, does Disco have that, or is it a product that's really scratching our own itch, which I just don't think is the right way to do it. And based on what we're seeing, it doesn't seem to be the right way to do it. Why would you build a product just to solve your need and then try to sell it to other people? You could try, but hopefully you don't invest too much money in it because it might go wrong. So that's kind of where we are with Disco. I think it's a great idea, and we're seeing it as the more research we do and the more people we talk to, like customers we interview or prospective customers we interview or people who have been using other tools to find out information on their site, the more we do that, the more we see that this might be a really great tool for cart abandonment. So it might not be the best thing to put on a homepage or a landing page because it's an incentivized survey, but it might be a great thing to put in your cart because so much cart abandonment is due to people going and looking for a coupon code. But Disco serves up coupon codes as you respond to questions. So if we could have the value prop that will, reduce your cart abandonment and actually help you learn about people who are in your cart, which are your actual customers before they buy, that could be an interesting value proposition that would set us apart and be desirable to a lot of our prospects. So that's where we're at right now.
Cool. Well, I mean, the landing page for trydisco.com looks fantastic. And I mean, what I think is really interesting about your story is, you went from, the job into a little of consulting, ebooks, productized services, blogging, and now you're kind of leveling up into building software. You didn't just start with building software on day one,
No.
So you've been able to kind of leverage those, especially the productized service piece, as a bridge to getting to bigger and better things.
Yeah, and I think, they've been really good, and the Copyhackers continues to be a very important business to me, right? Lance is really running with Disco, but it's true that everything that comes through Copyhackers does help us fund these other solutions so that we can, if we're recommending that people learn about their prospects and the visitors to their site using a survey, and we see problems maybe with some existing survey tools that are out there, then it makes sense to build something to help people. And so we've been able to kind of figure that out as we've gone, and then we've been able to fund this solution with everything we've been doing back at Copyhackers. So
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Joanna, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been really, really insightful, helpful for me. I know it will be for everyone else as well. Of course, your site is copyhackers.com, trydisco.com as well. Where else can people kind of reach out to you and connect?
Sure. On Twitter at Copyhackers. That's a good one. I think Lance has at TryDisco too. But again, we're still we're in beta and we're just not really marketing right now. I know we should be, but that's where we're at right now. So yeah, those are two places to to get a hold of me if you have questions or whatever it might be. I'm always available by email. So Joanna at copyhackers.com too. That's good. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry that it looks tragic in here. We really just moved in 2 days ago. So
that's great. I mean, thank you so much for taking the time and doing it. This is awesome.
Thank you. It was great chatting with you, Brian.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in today. Get all the show notes for this entire season at productizepodcast.com. And to get my free Productize crash course, where I share my best strategies for launching and sustaining your Productize service business, head over to productizecourse.com. All right, time to get back to working on the business.